Welcome to the Joy Work Show, the podcast that goes beyond the surface of business right to the heart to explore the real joy and the stories behind success. Not just the moments of celebration, but the challenges that pave the way for them. Hiya. I'm Diane, and here we know that joy isn't just about the good times. Often the greatest joy comes right after the greatest challenge. And today's conversation is one that I know will resonate with many women building businesses because it was a light bulb for me, or should I say, more like somebody switching a light on in the room I was already sitting in that I thought I could see clearly, but actually there was so much more that I needed to see, especially for those of us that are navigating a stage of life that is still too far rarely talked about in life, never mind entrepreneurship. I'm joined by Claire Bartlett, an entrepreneur who has spent more than a decade running her own business and who now supports women navigating the realities of perimenopause and menopause while building and leading their businesses. In this conversation, we talk honestly about the impact of hormonal change on energy, focus, confidence, and capacity, and why so many women have been left to figure it out alone, feel like they might be going a little bit mad when actually all they need is the right information and the right support. Claire shares her own experience of recognising the role perimenopause was playing in her life and business, how she adapted her work around it, and how that journey led her to help other women do the same. This is a conversation about awareness, about leadership, and about creating businesses that actually support the women running them in real life, running real businesses. But as always, it's so much better to hear from the guests themselves. So let's go. Hi, Claire, and welcome to the Joy Work Show. I am so delighted to have you here today, and I'm even more delighted because I love it when I get to find out all about the guest exactly the same time as the listeners. So let us know who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Yes, well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. I am Simplified CEO, Claire Bartlett, and I have been, I don't know where to start the journey from. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years now. I've had an accounting practice for all that time. I still have it. Learn a lot of lessons through that process. And I first stepped into entrepreneurship through, I think it's a very common necessity of I had my daughter, didn't want to go back to full time, especially in that industry at that time. Part-time work wasn't really an option. So I took the very scary leap into self-employment and it worked out. I've had a great journey. And then a couple of years ago, I realized that very naturally I like to sort of coach and support people. And I was coaching my accounting clients through their business. Obviously, we'd been through COVID, so I'd really supported them through that. And I sort of realized, okay, I'm doing all of this and it's not actually part of the service. I can turn this into something separate. So I launched a second business, a coaching business. And although I've loved it, it's something that comes really natural to me. I really struggled with a lot of the elements of setting up a business that had just seemed so easy to me previously. And it's taken a lot of time, I think, to work through that and figure out why things were different, why I was struggling, the exhaustion, all of these things. And then it finally hit me one day. I was like, okay, light bulb moment. I'm in the perimenopause.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, when I started researching how and why that might be impacting me, everything just slotted into place. Everything made sense. And I had to figure out a way of working differently and making that more achievable for me and eliminating some of those roadblocks and some of those things that come up through perimenopause. So I worked through all of that. I built a framework around how I redesigned my business to support me in this new chapter and this new version of myself. And now that's how I help other entrepreneurs. Because when I started looking into it, I was like, okay, nobody is talking about this. There's so much about perimenopause out there now. We're very well informed that it's a thing and it's coming, and, some of the ways that it can show up for us, but nobody is connecting the dots between how it might be impacting us and how that impacts our business. And actually, at this stage in our lives, this is where most entrepreneurs set up businesses. It's where we get the most success. We're at the peak of our careers, and then we suddenly feel different and things aren't working the same, and nobody is talking about why that is. So yeah, after doing a lot of research and all the neuroscience behind it and all of that, now I've built this framework and help others make sense of this point in our lives.
That's so interesting to me. So, because with you setting up your other business 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, you'd have been a completely different age, stage, point in your life. And obviously, as you said, now this setting up and thinking, why can't I do it? And it's so interesting to me because I too set up my business 2.5 years ago now when I had my second child. And because I just couldn't see how it was going to work having two, and I had two under two at that point, how it was going to
You're
work.
a brave woman.
I would like to say it was planned, but it wasn't quite how it was. It wasn't. But so, so grateful and so thankful now. But yeah, I had two under two, and then I was launching a business. And I'm actually an older mum, so I had my first child when I was 39. In fact, I was 39. She was born in the February, and I was 40 in the May. And then had my second child at over 41. So that hits differently as well. And then launching a business. And there was lots of that, like hearing the way that you talk, there was lots of that when I launched the business. I was like, why am I not as confident as I was? Why am I not? Because I had this career where I was super confident, but also I knew what I was doing. I'd been doing it for 20 years. And then I thought I could just easily, you know, get into the business and transform into the business, and it didn't quite go like that. Plus I was, as I said, I had a 1 year old, and a 92.5 year old, and it was just like lost it all. And now I can see the way that you're talking about that, because I'll be in perimenopause. I don't know officially, but I'm in that stage. I'm around that age, and there's going to be lots of, and I have chronic illnesses as well, which one of them is endometriosis. So there's lots of things going on with that, with the hormones and things. And you're right, it's not spoke about. It's spoke about to do with why you might struggle to lose weight after 40, why you might struggle with your sleep after 40, why you might need to change the way you eat after 40. But like you say, how about, and I've had to change so much of my business since last summer because some of my illnesses have brought up new symptoms and getting a bit worse and things like that. So I've had to change lots of my business about that. But I don't know if I've thought about it really from the perimenopause. I've thought about it from the hormonal point, but not necessarily to do with perimenopause. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so that's exactly the problem, that we don't. And even I, in the beginning, wasn't. I was going to the doctors and having the conversations about me being in perimenopause, and then going home and being like, oh God, it's been such a bad day in the business and I'm really struggling. And for ages, I wasn't connecting the dots. And actually, one of the main things that happen in perimenopause, the first things is your progesterone drops. And that is sort of our calming function in our business. So that shows up in not being able to handle stress as well as we used to. So even a normal day in your business, yesterday is harder, has a bigger impact on us today. And then alongside that, our sleep is disrupted. So we can't even recover as well as we would have. So it really, when I started looking to it, I was like, oh my God, we're screwed. Like from every angle, there's things happening to us. And how on earth can you compete with that? And 52% of women in perimenopause talk about a loss in confidence. So you're not on your own in struggling in that area. And actually, that's one of the things that really showed up for me as well. I think I had such success in my first business. And yes, obviously it's difficult. And there was, many roller coaster moments in it. But overall, I'd always had the confidence. I knew what I was doing. So when that didn't instantly happen for me in the new business, my confidence took such a knock because I thought, God, have I lost my edge? Do I just not know what I'm doing in this business? Have I made a mistake? And all of these thoughts started coming up for me, which is, I'm renowned as a positive Polly. Like, I see the positive side in everything in my life. So it was really unusual for me to start being in these sort of dark places and having this self doubt. Um, and I've really had to work on that and understand, that actually that's not how I'm really feeling. That's the hormones that are sort of making me feel that way, and figuring out ways of working around that.
I'm just sitting here flabbergasted a bit because you just don't realize the impact that it has. And I think that the way business is changing, and obviously both of us are in the online space, and I think so much of it is showing up on social media and putting yourself out there and being your most authentic self. And I think when you're going through these things and the changes that women go through, that is the most difficult thing to do. And how do you show up when you don't feel right? And even like, as I said, like, your skin's changing, your hair's changing, your body's changing, and it's a real roller coaster to go on, and the effect that you can have in your business. But I think there'll be so many women out there that haven't thought about it affecting their business in that way. And we talk a lot about the sandwich generations, don't we, where we've got children to look after, plus we might be looking after elderly parents and those types of things, as well as running our businesses and looking after ourselves. And it just feels like another thing. And we put ourselves to the bottom of the list quite often. So what is it? How do you work with women on that? How does that look, and what do you see women going through?
So I think the very first step is education. It's understanding, actually, okay, this is why I'm feeling the way that I am, and this is why things are impacting me the way they are. And it's just, I love it when you see that light bulb moment in people's faces. That's how I felt. And there's been elements of that already for you in this
Yes,
conversation. Like,
yeah.
yeah, it just makes sense now. So that's the first step. And it's sort of not an apology, what's it like, acceptance and forgiveness of, okay, this isn't my fault. I'm not failing. I'm not falling out in love with my business, because that's a big thing that people just start thinking, oh, maybe I just don't want this anymore. And when you realize that it's not that at all, it's just that you need it slightly differently in a different way. So that's where I always have to start. It's just about sharing the awareness of, okay, this is what's physically happening to you, and this is how that might be presenting for you in your business. And then it is about simplifying things. So a lot of the cravings that we get internally at this point, it's about space and relinquishing some of that stress that we've been under for so long. The hustle culture that we've all bought into over the past years and has been really shoved down our throats just does not work. And it's toxic for us at this point, because if we try and just keep pushing through and, just keep working, and we'll get to the other side, there is no other side, or not for many years yet. So we have to adjust for that. So it's about designing a business that keeps our authority and our income and the success that we've achieved for ourselves, but just in a more spacious and relaxed way. So we're not constantly chained to our desk. We have those moments where we can go and have a nap if we need to, if our sleep's been disrupted, or, everything's just working easier using the automations that are available to us. It's just about stripping it back and building a business that doesn't take so much from us. So there's more left for our family and our friends and for ourselves. Because when you're exhausted from an average day in the office, you get home and there's nothing left for your family and your friends, and you just want to sit on the sofa. And we're at a point where we've worked really hard for what we've got, and we should be able to go out and enjoy it and celebrate and spend that time and make those memories. But we need to have an energy resource to be able to do that. So it's about creating that.
Absolutely. And as I say, I had to really strip my business back last summer and think about how I was working and but rather than feeling that it was me giving in or it was me being weak or anything like that, I actually felt more powerful, because it felt that I could make choices. And also, it's remembering why you were doing it in the first place. Like, the whole point of me starting the business was that I could be there for our girls, I could be there for myself, but I could still create that success that I craved. And whilst I'm nowhere near where I want to be, I am getting there, and I am picking my girls up from school, and I drop them off in the morning, and, and all of those. And it's really like, you have to be like, when you talked about the hustle culture, you have to be really honest with yourself about what your success looks like. And your success doesn't need to look like somebody else's, and doesn't need to be this big fancy thing. If that's what it is for you, then absolutely shoot for the moon and go for it. But it can be picking your children up. It can be going to the gym at lunchtime on a Monday. It can be those things, and actually having that time and space. And that's what I had to create business, because I could see the trajectory that I was on. And I thought, if I don't start this now, I am going to have a business that is not going to be a business, because I'm not going to be able to keep up. And you use the word awareness, about like that first step of just being aware. And that's where I was last year, of like, I am so aware of and it was limitations, but actually they can be my strengths rather than them being limitations, rather than seeing like that I can build around them and build a business that works for my life. And that's a really successful place to be.
It is, and it's super empowering. And if you had tried to ignore those, ignore your body and not listen to yourself and push through, you would have just got straight into overwhelm and burnout, and then you would have had nothing. So it really is about listening to yourself and having that awareness, um, and building, my version of success and my why was a million times different 10 years ago than what I'm looking for now. And actually, what I found with a lot of my clients is that they're not looking to necessarily grow their income. They've got themselves to a great place, and they're happy with the income. They just want to work less for it. So it's about, literally just building something that is sustainable for us as we go through this chapter, because there's going to be some days where we really don't feel like doing anything. And then there's going to be other days where we are on a high and we can get, a week's worth of work done in a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So it's just about building the flexibility within our businesses to allow us to ride that wave.
Well, that's it, 'cause it doesn't mean you're any less excited, or you're any less hardworking, or you're any less. And it is about making most of those days where the energy does feel great, and you do wake up with a spark. And use the word hustle, and that hustle culture has such a negative connotation. But you can make your hustle look like whatever you want to make it look like. And if that means one night you feel great working until midnight, you can do that, because you've created the space in your life to
Exactly.
do it. Or if there's, because we all have those times in our business that do command more of us than other times. But what I do now is I make sure that I've got space either side of it. I'm like, well, okay, those 2 days are going to be a bit crazy, a bit mental. You are going to have to push through a wee bit on those 2 days, but here's the space that you have to recover. Because you're running a business, and it's not smooth, and it's not, as much as I say I'm building it around my life, and part of that is illness, there is some days that I feel really, really rotten and just have to get up and do it. But the other side of it is, you're waking up to a life that you're excited to build.
Exactly. Yeah,
You're
just
not
a
waking.
passion for it.
Yes.
And I think the resentment can come in if you ignore your body and ignore what's happening to you, and you are just trying to, carry on with the hustle culture and push through. You can then start resenting your business because you're not enjoying it. The Sunday night dread can come back, and in those moments, that's where we start really questioning, oh, is this really what I want to do? And all of that can be stripped away if you just listen to yourself. And the awareness needs to come down even to the task level. So there'll be some tasks that you absolutely love, that really light you up, that you could do all day. And there's some other tasks that unfortunately are necessary because we're business owners, but we need to have some sort of reserve to be able to get through them, or, like you say, create the space around them. So it's really important that we actually assess that. Okay, what tasks am I doing in my business that I love? What tasks are we doing that we don't need to actually be doing at all? So there's three elements to work that I talk about. There's the busy work, the builder work, and the busy work is where we, excuse me, where we hide. It's the stuff, on just rebuilding my website for the thousandth time that is completely unnecessary. It's where we're comfortable. So a lot of the times it's, maybe social media, or like, getting more posts out, more content. It's things that is not moving the needle in the business, and it can be scrapped. It's not necessary at all. The builder work are the tasks where we have to do them. It's, things like your accounting for most people is not a fun task, but it's an essential element of business. The builder work is where, if you are lucky enough to be in a position, you can start outsourcing them and getting a team around them, but they're things that are required in your business. the breakthrough work, this is where we should be aiming to spend the majority of our time, because this is what makes the biggest impact to our business. So that is the client delivery. It's the, having the brainstorms and the working towards what we're looking for next, having the sales conversations, designing the new products and services. The breakthrough is where we will light up the most because it's our business and our passion. It's going to be income generating for us. So we want to build a system where we're spending as much time as we possibly can in the breakthrough and as little time as possible in the busy. And so that's what I try and design my clients' businesses to and allow them then for the space to do the necessary when they have to, just when the energy allows.
Where do you, or is there a point when you're working with women in this, do you feel that there's the most resistance, or is there any resistance?
That's an interesting question. I think it depends on the client. I think a lot of the time it's facing the unknown.
Yeah.
And when we do an assessment of, often a lot of the products and services and packages that they've been selling and built, their business through. And I will assess them with them and I'll say, okay, well, this one actually, it's taking you a lot of time and effort. It's not the one you enjoy delivering the most. And if you look at the revenue that's actually generating, it's not generating you that much. So maybe we look at just scrapping that offer altogether. Often there can be quite a lot of nerves around doing that because even though it's not the most income generating, it's still generating income. They're worried about losing that. But what happens is when they get rid of these things that weigh heavy on them, they actually tend to increase their revenue on the other services and products because they've got their light back and they're enjoying delivering them. They've got more time to give to them. So yeah, it can be nerve-wracking for people and I completely understand that, but it tends to be where we're stripping back to, okay, what's the core of your business? What do you enjoy the most and what's generating you the most income? Because sometimes you'll look at client's business and they've got something that they absolutely loathe and it's not bringing in any income, but they're still pushing
Yeah.
because they think it was the first project they ever launched or something like that. I'm like, get rid of it, just let it go.
I think people are, it is that fear, isn't it? And I see it a lot as well, that people don't want to let services go, or they think that that's suddenly going to be the one that's going to change overnight for them. But actually, when you keep it simple, when you do simplify, you have more energy to put behind the ones that are actually going to change things for you overnight. And you're not, and it's also that confusion of message and why people will come to you and, when they simplify, they'll find, like you talked about, the busy tasks, like the social media, like we all know we need to be doing that. We all need to know it's part of the marketing. But the reason we spend too much time there is we're confused about what we should be posting. So we spend a lot of time messing around and not just having a strategy that there's my content, there it goes out, I spend this amount of time on it. But when you get clear, because you're simplifying, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes much more simple and straightforward because you're not trying to shoot off into all these directions or what should I be promoting this week? And, if you've got 5 and 6 different offers. But it is, you see that fear. And I do think it's a female entrepreneur thing,
Hmm.
fear. I do think it is that it's something that I see and it comes back to that confidence.
Yeah, I mean, throughout history, right, women have been oppressed and we've been kept down and we haven't got the same just core confidence that our male counterparts have, especially when it comes to business. A man will go for a job or start a business when they have half the skills that's required for it, but their confidence carries them over the finish line. Women won't go until they've got 100% of those skills, and then they'll still doubt themselves, even though they have everything that's required to make it a success. So we need to compensate for that in any way that we can. And it's just about working at our own pace. There's a way of, if we, this is your comfort zone right here, and you are wanting to do a TED talk or some massive thing that is so far out your comfort zone, it feels like it's just never, ever achievable for you. If you try and leap from nicely snug in your comfort zone onto that stage, you'll never make it. But if you just do tiny little nudges out, pushing the boundaries every time. You stand up at a networking event and you give your pitch, you go on a podcast, you do all of these other things that are still uncomfortable for you and they're still pushing your boundaries, but it's not that huge leap.
Mm-hmm.
Before you know it, you have the confidence and you're ready there to do the TED talk. It's just you can't even notice the movement that you've made. So we have to handle things differently for sure as women, I think. And it's about, again, understanding that, having the bravery to start pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone and understanding that nothing big will ever happen to you while you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's those steps, isn't it? And just putting those steps in place. It's like you can have the 5-year vision, but actually to get there, you need to come back and break it down into much, much, much smaller steps to get there, because that looks wonderful, but it also looks big and scary and impossible at this point. So it is really important to break it down. Obviously, before we started, you talked about starting to work with this perimenopause work and working with women and that. How did it feel when you first changed direction a little bit and started working with this? What kind of response were you getting from your audience, from people out there about doing this work?
The response was amazing because actually it is so needed, and the content that I'm putting out and my personal journey, but also what I've learned is resonating with people and they're seeing themselves in it. The same as how you felt in the beginning, things are making sense and slotting into place. And it really surprised me when I started looking into this that actually there is nobody talking about it. There has been lots of scientific investigations and things on perimenopause and the impacts. There hasn't been one single research done on how it impacts work and entrepreneurship. And actually, there's 1 in 4 female entrepreneurs are in that phase of life now where where the perimenopause will be kicking in for them. So it's huge. The numbers are incredible. We need support in that. We need to have that understanding. There's nowhere currently that you can go to get that understanding. There's so much about health, like you said, okay, well, let's improve our sleep, let's improve our diet, let's improve our skincare, all of these things. But that's all sort of superficial and
Yeah.
it's surface level. But actually, how is it showing up in our day to day lives? How is it showing up in our confidence when we can't take in as much in a really important meeting? It's not landing as well as it was because we've lost that cognitive impact, or when we forget our words. And I mean, this is probably the biggest one for me actually, is halfway through a sentence, I'll be like, hang on, it's right there. I know what I'm trying to say and I just can't get it. And it's about that can be really impacting on our confidence. So it's about building awareness of that, and actually it's okay and you're not on your own and we all have it, and feeling okay with those changes. But yeah, it was surprising actually how many people it was resonating with.
But I think that's it. I think it's with all these things, when people start to talk about it and start to say, and then there's so many people that are like, that's me. That's how I've been feeling. That's why. And the thing is, if it was an illness, like, it would be supported and talked about and researched. And if it was a male illness, it definitely would be, supported and stuff. We see this time and time again. And it just amazes me, because even when I think back with the illnesses that I've had, and the amount of times, even in the workplace, like not being an entrepreneur, but actually being an employee in a workplace, and the amount of times I hid it in excruciating pain and hiding in bathrooms and being in such a state, in times like that, and not feeling that I could talk about it because it was to do with women's health and not to do with, anything else. And there isn't that support in the workplace either. It's
No.
one thing being an entrepreneur when you're out there on your own and doing it, but within the workplace as well. And it infuriates me, the lack of support and funding there is into women's health. And as somebody that goes through the processes with the NHS, it is the lack of research, the lack of understanding, even with doctors who have operated on me, is just, it's baffling. It's completely and utterly baffling how underfunded women's health is. And when you think about this point in the perimenopause, and I can now look back on women who worked for me when I was younger, so I wouldn't have had a clue. And because when I was younger, perimenopause wasn't even spoke about, it wasn't even a word.
That's the thing. I didn't even know it existed until probably 5 years before I was experiencing it. So,
Yeah.
and actually the statistics in regards to the workplace is terrifying. The amount of women that actually end their careers early, they leave positions, they don't go for promotions. It is literally billions of pounds of the economy are impacted because there is not the correct support out there for
Hmm.
women that are experiencing these symptoms. And honestly, enough is enough. And I feel like I can't shout loud enough about this, that we need to have that education, and there needs to be the research into, okay, what is this actually doing for the economy? How can we make changes and put things in place to support women that are going through this?
That's it. You can just imagine, and it's all these stages, isn't it? When you see women leaving the workplace, when they have children, then when they go through this, it's whether it's perimenopause or they wait till they're actually in the full blown menopause. But I can look back at women who worked for me that I had no idea as a 20-year-old and they were in their 40s and their 50s. But I can now look back and play a video in my head of seeing them change.
But we had no education. We didn't know
No.
how to support them, and we didn't even know that this was a thing, that perimenopause was even a thing. And even regards the menopause, we all knew that it happened, but pretty much the only education I'd ever had was it just meant that your period stopped.
Yeah.
That's as
And it was
far as
just
it
when
had.
women went through the change.
Yeah, and they might get a bit hot, they might have a flush. That was
Yeah.
basically the only education that I'd ever had. So it's recognizing that now, raising the education not only amongst us women, but the male, bosses and business owners, they need to have the education too, because they're the ones that need to put this support in place for people. So yeah, it's just about starting the conversation and connecting the dots for people that actually, yes, we're all going through this. I think there's a third of the British female population currently are in the age bracket of perimenopause. So it's it's huge, and we just need to start connecting the dots. Okay, well, what is that actually meaning in the workplace and in entrepreneurship?
Hmm. And I truly believe that an education around women's health needs to come from everywhere, because I am a firm believer in that they should really need to start talking about periods in school
Hmm.
and educating them as a class, as boys and girls, not just go and tell the girls what's going to happen to them, but also, the boys and girls and what happens and why it happens and what could change. And if we started talking about that then, and we just spoke about women's health as they go through, that would change from like the grassroots,
Yeah.
and would change throughout, and we would just be more open about this is what happens to women's health, and here's how we can support, and here's how we can do things. The way they're campaigning at the minute about like the toxic masculinity and helping our boys too. And that's just as important. Like, I'm not dismissing that, but it has to be this, this thread throughout everything, because if we start talking to the children about it, it's not this dirty little secret that it has been, when we were like, but you wouldn't tell anybody in school you were on your period, and you wouldn't want anybody to see that you were taking any sanitary products into the toilet, and you'd stuff them up your jumper and all of those things. And I just, why are we embarrassed? Because it's something that every single woman goes through.
No, but because when we were growing up, our generation, these things were not spoken about. They were completely taboo topics. And I think the world is a much more improved place. I think those conversations are a lot more frequent now. I know in my daughter's school, for instance, the reception area, they have all the sanitary products that they need. So that wasn't a thing when I was at school. If if you didn't have something with you, then you were in trouble, basically. It was a very, very awkward moment to try and be brave enough to have a conversation with someone. So things are improving. I think the problem here is that they are looking to improve the conversations about puberty and periods and the starting of the journey. But at what point do we bring in the conversations and awareness about perimenopause and menopause? Because talking to, 11-year-olds about that is, they just need to handle what's going to happen to them next.
Yeah, yeah,
So where do we start adding in the education around what happens later on down the line?
yeah. I know it is a difficult thought, and obviously everyone's having children at different ages and things now, and it's a minefield, but it really infuriates me, the lack of research and funding as somebody who has been going through it since I was a teenager, with gynecology departments and things like that. And it hasn't improved from that point of view much, to be perfectly honest, because conversations I was having then is conversations I'm having now. And they don't talk about it either now that I come to think about it, because I'm still under a gynae consultant. And one of the last conversations I had with them, I'm like, would I be expecting changes with the perimenopause? And they couldn't answer. Like, they couldn't answer, like,
Education is not there for,
no.
and obviously all of my friend group with the same sort of age range. Now, I did hit perimenopause early. I was 40, 41, so um, that is slightly early. But a lot of my friends are getting quite severe symptoms now, and they're going to the doctors, and the doctors are just, I mean, I feel like I was incredibly lucky that my doctor listened to me, got me the treatment I needed, and gave me the awareness. But nobody else seems to be being as lucky as that. And I think somebody messaged me, commented on one of my posts the other day saying, I'm having a nightmare. My doctor will not listen to me. And she actually teaches on perimenopause. So she's fully, educated on it, but she can't physically get the help that she needs because they won't listen to her. And I just find it heartbreaking and exhausting that
Mhm.
we've got to face this battle when it's a natural thing that happens to every single woman, and yet it's still so difficult to get the support that we need. So if I can just start building that awareness and getting the support out there in just this one area, then, we're doing something.
Well, that's it. It's having the conversations, isn't it? It's just talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and getting more people to listen and more people to feel that it's not something to be embarrassed about or shameful about, and actually you can advocate for yourself, as difficult as they make it sometimes.
It's so difficult because one of the symptoms that I was getting was really negative mindset, almost to the point of depression, which, like I said earlier, is polar opposite to how I normally am. And I had the awareness. So when I was in it, when I was in that dark place, I was like, this is just the perimenopause. Like, this is not how you're genuinely feeling. But a lot of people don't have that awareness. We don't realize that actually it's one of the biggest times in a woman's life that we can suffer from depression, even if you've never ever suffered from it before. It really does play with our mindset. And if you don't have that awareness, if you are making decisions while you're in that frame of mind, not realizing that it's hormones that are making you feel that way, it's life changing for some people. And it's so important that we understand that this is not how you feel. This is just the hormones that are making you think it is.
No, absolutely. And you think there'd be something that would be really simple for the doctors to do, in terms of that hormone's low, so that's what we'll work on. That hormone's low, so that's what we'll work on. We'll get that stabilized, and then we'll see what we can do next. It's just, yeah, it's very baffling, very confusing, and I could outrage for about it for a
We
long,
could
long
go on about
time.
this for hours, but yeah,
Yes.
so it's about, unfortunately, I think we have to take up the fight ourselves and get that awareness out there ourselves.
But I think what's really important about what you're doing and what's coming across to me is having that conversation and knowing that there's support there, even not from a medical point of view, but support there, that you're not alone. This isn't you feeling like, and it is a lonely place to be when you're going through those changes and you're feeling that way. There's other people, and sometimes that can be, you can just see shoulders drop when they realize that, oh, that this isn't just happening to me. This isn't just something, you know, and with your support for those female entrepreneurs, thinking, all right, all I need to do is some tweaks in my business and my life could already be a lot simpler. And that could give them the strength to then go and advocate and get the medical help they'll need.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it is so difficult to get the medical support that we need. A lot of the women that I talk to, they aren't, diagnosed in perimenopause. They're not on HRT. They haven't got to that point yet. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me whether you are in, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to
Yeah.
diagnose you. It's not important whether you are officially in perimenopause or menopause. What is important to me is how you feel. And if you are having these feelings, if you are feeling like something's changed in your business, and you can't quite identify why, just coming to one of my workshops or, listening, coming to digest some of my content and just learning a bit more about it often will be the yes, this, I'm resonating with this is what's happening to me. And then, like you say, having that, okay, I'm not on my own. Like, this is not, I'm not failing. I'm not weak for feeling the way that I'm feeling. Like you said earlier, this is normal. And okay, now let's just learn the techniques that I need to transition and make this business work for me and work with me and with my new hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as you know, I ask everybody 3 questions to do with joy, as we are called the Joy Work Show here.
Yeah.
So the first one is the joy spotlight, a favourite thing that has shaped your life, business, or work.
So I think for me, it's probably nature. So I need a lot of time to reset and recharge, like especially now, and just getting outside and for me, when I talk about space, it's actually like a real need. So going out into big fields or like actual space outside just fills me with joy, and being able to do that with my daughter and drag her out. We're getting to the point where I have to drag her most of the time, but she's happy when she's there. But yeah, that's probably the thing that brings me the most joy at the moment.
I think and it does come up a lot on this podcast in this particular question because, and for some people it's walking, some people it's running, some people it's just getting out with their dog or, whatever it might be. And I feel a difference when I do that because I feel it because one, I've got a dog, so I don't put any like headphones or anything in. And I find myself actually paying attention. My phone's in my pocket. I'm paying attention. I'm not trying to multitask and do a million things. I'm paying attention to the weather, how I'm feeling and the noises and what my dog's doing and things like that. And sometimes I need that feeling of feeling a little bit small and insignificant sounds horrible,
No,
but
I know exactly what
you
you
need
mean.
that feeling of like there's so much things that are bigger than me and bigger than my problems. And like I remember somebody said to me once, when she sees lots of trees, she feels really abundant because look at how many leaves there are and look at how the world does and look at, and I need that feeling. So if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm procrastinating or I'm spiraling, which I have a tendency to do, it's just like, right, get up, get your trainers on and get out because by the time you come back, you'll be reminded.
Physically grounding to be
Yes.
outside, isn't it? For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm exactly the same. So I do a lot of gardening, and people, my husband and family comment all the time, "I don't know why you don't put your headphones in and listen to a podcast." I'm like, "No, because I want to hear the birds. I want to hear the noises around me." And it wouldn't have the same positive impact on me if I had noise in my ears.
Yeah, well, I couldn't, and I'm so glad because the reason I don't and the reason I didn't was because I need to hear the dog. I need to hear if there's another dog approaching or a bite or things like that. And I'm so thankful because it's the only time of my life that I'm probably quiet because I'm one of these that's always needs something on in the background.
Yeah, I'm the same.
But like you, it's that hearing the birds, hearing the trees, if it's raining, hearing the rain, and just feeling all of the things and just allowing myself to do that. And sometimes I'll walk around and not think anything and like, one of those things of how did I even get home? I know the path so well. And other times I'll really take my time and see, but it's just that feeling that the world is a lot bigger than sometimes you feel sitting behind your desk sometimes. So yeah, I absolutely love that. I often wonder what I would say to these questions, and I think that is probably one of the things for me these days. It's taken me a long time to get there, but definitely these days. The second one is inspired by joy, a person, book, or mentor that just leaves you inspired every day.
So this one is difficult for me because there's so many.
Can you mention as many as you like?
Brene Brown, I think, is
Mm.
fabulous. I love her books on sort of courage and bravery, I think is fabulous. And again, gives you that sort of feeling like, okay, I'm not my own to have these doubts and fears to push through. So yeah, she's probably one that comes to mind. I read a lot of books, so that's again another like calming thing that brings me joy. And books like Brene's, I love to dive into.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really love, and I love that she talks about courage. And I actually love the way that she talks about joy. And I didn't know she spoke about joy like this, but quite often I'll talk about joy being gritty and actually really brave. Because if somebody follows their joy and stands up and tells the world, this is my joy and I'm following it, whether you like it or not, I think that's the bravest thing you could ever do. And I can't remember what podcast it was on, but I heard Brene Brown talking about it like that, which makes total sense from the way she talks about courage and bravery, and she was like, your joy is just that it's raw. It's if you do it, it's not unicorns and cupcakes and pink and glitter and all of those things and birthdays, which are all wonderful, but it's that feeling of, if you truly follow your joy and truly look for it every day, then it's the bravest thing that you can do, because everybody has trials and hard times in their life. But if you still look for the joy, then that's, brave and courageous and everything else. So yeah, I totally understand the Brené Brown. Totally understand that. And then the joy killer, the thing you would like to see removed from the world.
The perimenopause would be a good one. Can we just get rid of it, please? If not that, which might not be possible, social media, I think, can be an absolute killer. It can knock your confidence. One of the biggest things I've seen throughout my time in business is other business owners comparing, God, look how far they've come, look where they are. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been in business 10 years. Like, you're starting today. So we're going to be in different places. So it's just the comparison, and comparison is what's the saying? The thief
Person's a thief of all joy.
of joy. So I think social media has got to go as well.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because I completely agree in the comparisonitis, and I am terrible for it. And I've had a few people kind of ground me back again and remind me that I am in like 2 years of my business, and I have two young children, and I have illnesses. And so, my 24 hours looks very different from somebody else's 24 hours. And I think people forget that, there is that saying of everyone's got the same 24 hours. Like, well, no, they don't. They absolutely don't. But then social media can spread the word, start conversations, can empower. But, and this is another one that comes up a lot as well, because it is such a divisive thing, because it can be so toxic, and it can be so, like, I spend a lot of time on social media, obviously, because I'm in an online business, but I make sure my algorithm
Yeah, I
is,
create my feed. Yeah.
yeah, I make sure that, and if anything comes up, even if it's just for a while, I'll just mute that person, block that person for a while, maybe come back to them if I've seen that I've missed them or things like that. Because also, somebody you followed for years, their life could change and could have something that then triggers you. If you've been trying for a baby and unsuccessful, and maybe that's why you followed this person, because they were on the same path, and then all of a sudden they're pregnant and you're not, you might need to, not follow them for a while. And I think we have to remember that with social media, that we can see the things that we want to see. Obviously, it's becoming a bit less and less like that with the ads and different bits and pieces. But, we can tailor it and see the things that we want if we want to. But I definitely think the amount of time, and I'm trying to stop the amount of time that I need to be on there for my business, but I don't need to be on there scrolling all of the time.
Yeah.
That doom scroll thing, and then you say, it's like that busyness thing. Oh, I'm on social media, I'm just doing some research.
Yeah, it's one of the worst because we can lose hours if we're not careful. But I think if everyone was just a little bit more honest on there,
Yes.
then I think it would be a much better place, because we have that, everyone, it's called the Instagram perfect life. And it's so vapid in entrepreneurs that we only see the highlights. We only see when they're at glamorous events, or they're traveling on their private jets, or whatever it is. And they don't remind us, okay, yeah, but it's taken me 20 years in business to get here. Or yesterday was a terrible day, I lost a client. Or, we don't talk about the hardships. And if we did, the comparisonitis would be dulled, because we'd see, yeah, they're still not perfect. And I think the main thing that made a difference in this for me was when I launched the accounting business. There was some people that were really amazing in the industry. They were real advocates for the profession and all of that. And I really aspired to them. I really looked up to them. And then I was blessed enough that actually I became at the level that suddenly I was in the same rooms as them. I was talking on the same stages as them, and I got to know them, and I realized, oh shit, yeah, you don't have your shit together either. Like, you are, you are just as confused and winging it as I am. You're just doing it at a different tier. And
Yeah.
it's that really broke that veil of comparison for me. I really realized that we're all, just doing our best every day. And I think
Mhm.
if we could just get people to understand that,
Yeah.
then the world would be a better place, I think, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. The one question that I haven't asked, and there might be people thinking about it, is the difference between perimenopause and menopause.
So the perimenopause is the start. So it's actually more chaotic because our hormones are still there, and they're going up and down, and everything is just crazy. So the perimenopause is where we probably feel the most physical changes, sorry, the sort of internal changes, but not necessarily like the physical changes. So you're still
Yeah.
having a period, you're still,
Yeah.
all of that sort of thing. And then the menopause is when you are like the actual physical periods have stopped.
Because they don't diagnose you until you've not had periods for 12 months, isn't it, with the
Yeah.
menopause?
But what's so difficult is HRT treatment stops your periods. So I haven't had a period in a really long time, but that's forced through the medication. So how will I ever know? When will I
You'll
know that
never know.
when I've shifted into menopause? So yeah, the biggest difference is that's when you physically your periods stop, but the hormones, it starts in perimenopause. That's when things are starting to adjust and your levels are dropping, and that's when we have such physical reactions. A lot of the things that actually happen in perimenopause, the brain fog and the loss of cognitive function and those sorts of things, they do level back out. So when you get to menopause, you have more physical things, but the mental struggles that we've been through, they do start to level out again. So when you hit perimenopause and you start having all of these issues, they're not for life. They will level out again, but they can last for years. It can be up
Yeah.
to 10 years, for some people. So that's why it's so important to not just try and push through, and actually make the changes for yourself.
And I think it's actually that thing to remember as well, that the perimenopause can start at lots of different ages.
Yeah.
And while it's rare to start younger, there is women who are in their 30s who have gone into the perimenopause or found out it was the reason that maybe they couldn't have children and things because they've already got to that stage, or, so I think you just need to go and shout loud if you know your body and you know something isn't right in
And
any shape or
and
form.
start tracking it. The I think the thing for me was that I was having physical, so my periods went crazy. I was, I'd always been quite, I could diarise and
Yeah,
tell the day of the month by them, and that all went out the window. So I think because I had those physical symptoms, I felt like I had something to go to the doctor with. Whereas if it was just like, oh, I'm just forgetting the odd word and I'm a bit grumpy today and that sort of thing, we don't necessarily always have the confidence to go to the doctors and voice that, because we feel, and rightly so, that they will just tell us, and another really common thing is that they're put on antidepressants
yeah,
when
yeah,
it's that's nothing to do with it.
no.
So
And they wonder why it doesn't help.
yeah, or it can make things worse.
Yeah,
It's really difficult, but yeah, understand your body. Just start diarising and making notes of the changes that you're feeling. And unfortunately, like I said, we have to educate ourselves on this. And
yeah.
hopefully, through the research and the experiences I've had, by me sharing it, I'm sort of shortening that. You don't have to go and read all the research papers that I've spent hours reading. You can just come and get the highlights.
Yeah. So if people do want to come and get those highlights and start their education with you, where should they come to?
So Instagram is probably the best place. So it's at the Claire Bartlett.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
All of the links will be in the show notes that people can just go and click and come and find you, Claire, because I sure am going to be educating myself on this. You have opened my eyes to a few things, which seems silly when you think how long I've been dealing with um, gynecologists and everything else, but it just goes to show that there just isn't enough information out there, enough people having the conversations. Before you go, I always ask anybody one last question, and that is, what is the joy legacy that you would like to leave behind?
That question. Um, I think it would be about empowering women entrepreneurs. And I have a big vision of doing that just in general. But if can start with this area of entrepreneurship, yeah, I think I feel pretty good with that legacy.
I think it would be a great legacy to leave behind. And I think you're going to make massive change because you're being brave enough to talk about it. And sometimes that takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage. Thank you so much for coming on today. I have loved every bit of this conversation, and I think you've just opened up a can of worms for me to go and do lots of research. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
As we come to the end of this conversation, here is the overarching point before I give you my 3 takeaways from today's episode. We can't come to the end of this conversation. This conversation cannot stop about women's health and being a woman in the real world. But here are my 3 takeaways from today. that feel important. First, if your body changes, if your hormones change as we women adapt and grow through all the seasons of our life, your business has to change with it. Trying to force yourself to operate the same way you always have is not resilience, is not strength, is not showing leadership. It is a denial. It is a way to keep yourself small and allow the world to keep you small. Awareness is the first step to leading yourself well, to becoming better in life and therefore in business. Second, that women have been expected to quietly push through perimenopause and menopause as just something that happens and you go through it and you get over it and that is it. And we've been expected to do it quietly for too long. And in business, that expectation is even stronger because we have been competing in a landscape that is not set up for the changes that women can go through. Changes that can make her better and stronger. And I don't just mean perimenopause, I mean through all of women's seasons of life, of why the difference in the workplace can actually be the strength. But ignoring what is happening in our bodies doesn't make us stronger. It makes the journey harder. It makes the patriarchy win. It makes it even more difficult for those that are going to come after us to make change and have the success that they want to have. Whereas actually having the awareness, speaking up about it, doing what we need to do, and changing the systems to work for us and building businesses that work for us slowly means that we are changing the world. And third, knowledge is power. The more women understand what is happening hormonally, cognitively, and emotionally during this phase of life, but all phases of life, the more agency we have to design businesses and lives that actually support them, support us, support our families, support our businesses, support the world. Because let's face it, without women, none of us would be here. So we need businesses that support all of that. And we need to have that knowledge to provide that support. This conversation is about more than perimenopause or menopause. It is about leadership. It is about self-awareness and building businesses that works for the human being running it. I hope you take as much away from this episode as I did. It is something that I think Claire and I could have spoke about for a long, long time. If you're a woman listening to this, I hope you go and get the knowledge that you need to get the strength, to get the support and build the business that you want. And if you're a man listening to this, I hope it's made you think a little bit differently about how you might approach your peers, your colleagues, women within your business, and the small tweaks that we can make that actually might make your business and your workplace even better. Thank you for listening to The Joy Work Show. I never take for granted how wonderful it is that people choose to spend their time here, whether listening or watching. And I am grateful for every one of you. I'd be even more grateful if you could give me 2 seconds and subscribe to the podcast. Wherever you're listening or watching, you should be able to click a like, a share, the alarm, wherever there's a button, you can do it. It takes you 2 minutes, 2 seconds, costs you nothing. And it really does change the world for us podcasters trying to get things out there. Thank you so much once again listening to The Joy Work Show, and I'll see you in the next episode.